And we're back. Another episode of the Wolves Only podcast powered by JWX. And I think we might be live streaming on Facebook on accident. Let me check here. Ruh-roh. Maybe not. But you know what? It's all right.
No, we're not on Facebook.
Should we be? Fuck it. JD, man, what is up?
Not much, man. It's all good.
You told me you wanted me to save some energy for the podcast, and dog, I got all the energy you can ask for.
Yeah, I figured that was unnecessary to say.
You know, it's really hard to run out of energy when you just wake up and piss excellence. No, but I love every second of my day. You know, even my bad days are better than my good days when I was drinking.
Oh yeah.
You know,
100%.
I like this. I like this because there's 3 guys on camera that all got sober and are sober, and all in different ways. And we're all dads. But JD, you're like a dad. You're like, you got like a lot of kids.
Yeah, I got a few.
How many exactly?
There's 11. We got 11 kids.
Oh, sheesh.
What was I thinking?
And they're all yours.
Yep. They're all single births, same wife. No twins.
My God.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
You don't hear about that ever. I mean, not very often, that's for sure. That's a lot of work.
Yeah. Drinking didn't help the problem, or actually it created a problem. It didn't help the situation. The situation is not a problem.
Well, actually, yeah. I mean, that's the other thing too. Is like you were drinking heavily. I mean, how long have you been sober?
It's been right at 10 months. Yeah, I don't remember the exact days, but yeah, 10 months.
10 months. And so you were drinking like heavily through 11 births, like and 11 children, and that's crazy. You know, like I was drinking through I have 1 child. Jake, you have 1, right?
1, and then 1 stepdaughter. Yeah,
1 stepdaughter. And I was drinking through that, and it really impaired my I don't know how good of a dad I was. But to go through 11, because I assume that you drank all the way up until your last child, right?
No, so actually my story is a little bit different. I didn't start drinking till probably I'm trying to do the timeline. I think number 10, somewhere around in there.
Oh,
yeah. So yeah, I didn't drink up to that point. That's what's a little bit different. And I think, it's hard to probably for some people, especially depending on how deep their ride was with the bottle. How extreme mine was for my situation, I guess, even though it was only like over a 9-year period, it got pretty heavy pretty quick. And, wasn't a violent thing. I considered myself like a nicer guy, which is part of my justification, a lot easier going and stuff. But yeah, pretty much the last 2 births probably. Yeah.
Interesting.
And then onward. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think everybody kind of, I mean, everybody's story as to, while we were in it is very similar, right? But like where it came from, where it started, and you don't practice Alcoholics Anonymous. I do. Jake doesn't. And I don't think Alcoholics Anonymous is the only way to go. Now, granted, I am after this going to a meeting. I truthfully there's a couple things that I agree with and disagree with. Now I know my sobriety date, right? And they're kind of two sobriety dates. One is when I stopped drinking. The second is when I stopped using prescription drugs. Okay, so technically, my sobriety date is after I stopped using prescription drugs. But
Yeah.
I'm learning. I'm reading this book. It's called I Am Leader. It's right here. It's huge. And they talk about he talks about a couple different things. He talks about, but he kind of relates everything back to Frankenstein, the story of Dr. Frankenstein and the monster. And then he also talks about the Jekyll and Hyde, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And I think everybody can relate to everybody who's ever dealt with a drinking problem or any problem, but we're gonna stay to drinking just for the sake of this conversation, because you weren't a drug addict, right?
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. Not my thing.
Just a good old fashioned drunk.
Yeah. It's the only thing that, my body's pretty sensitive to inputs. And so alcohol, ironically, was one of the few things that I could drink, that I could do and not feel bad, not get a headache, not, I mean, obviously there's hangovers and stuff like that. And you have your moments when you're, those hours that you aren't drinking, if there were.
Yeah.
But,
so,
yeah.
My issue with, Alcoholics Anonymous, and again, there's a lot of things that I'm very traditional AA. But and this is one thing that I've come to terms with in my own sobriety, is not identifying with the shadow, is what they refer to it in I Am Leader, right? Is like the best way to. So what ended up killing Dr. Jekyll, okay, was the fact that he had this like alter ego. He had this like this shadow figure of himself. Okay, the person who had to drink the potion so he could go and do all sorts of unscrupulous activities or whatever he was doing. He had to have that. He had that lurking in him all the time. It was like this underlying issue that he had, right? And he never came to terms with it because it was such a faux pas. It was such a stigma. He was expected to be a certain type of way from his parents and things like that, to where he used that as his release, right? And he knew he shouldn't have. He knew he wasn't supposed to, but he would identify with his underlying issues, the expectations from his parents to become this very serious doctor, so on and so forth. And then he would be able to let loose a little bit, but then he would go back to like hiding it and keeping it in hiding. And I think the problem with when we're Alcoholics Anonymous, like, I identify myself as an alcoholic because that's what we do in Alcoholics Anonymous.
Yeah.
But the difference is between saying like, I've dealt with a ton of trauma in my life and I'll never become anything at all because of my trauma or because of my addiction or because of whatever, because I am that. Where instead it's acknowledging the problem, right? We acknowledge it and we kind of in a way retrofit this into our lives. Like that's what we are. And I think that's more appropriate than just straight up identifying with the problem. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
So that's kind of been something I've been coming to terms with, as like I said, I was very traditional Alcoholics Anonymous, and I'll never give up AA because I love it. And I like the bond and the brotherhood, but some of the mindset of it, I'm starting to open my eyes up a little bit. And I like watching your stuff.
Yeah, it's interesting that you brought that up. I'm not terribly familiar with AA. I think I had one experience of it. I think my wife, right as when we first got married, for some reason, went to a AA meeting in our little town where we were going to school at. I have no idea why. I don't know what the situation was, but anyway, I really have no experience with it. My issue with any program is the issue, the power of words, and so it's very specific that I don't know anything about the program other than this identification as something that in my eyes you're not anymore. Like you have the tendencies of it, right? And you have, so I have the tendency to become an alcoholic, and I'm fully aware of that now. I didn't know that before, but now I'm fully aware of it. And so my choice is not to dabble in it, not to see if I'm strong enough to drink one. Like this is a stupid place to go for me, you know? So, that's kind of my issue, but I in no way consider myself an alcoholic, you know? And, I mean, that's in the past I was, and that was a hard thing for me to come to terms with, because my view of what an alcoholic was pretty bad. And so I literally had to come to this conclusion that I was, you know, maybe a nicer version of that monster, but I was that. And, that was the big eye-opening moment for me, but I am no longer. But I do have those tendencies for sure. So I have to be fully aware of that. But yeah, I don't necessarily like to camp on, you know, if that's where people are at, you know, then that's where they're at. I do think that, I'm fully convinced that there's nothing specific about any one program that is doing anything for anybody. It's the individual. And so, you know,
it's your willingness.
Yeah.
You know, it's not only, it's one, your willingness, but before it's your willingness, it's your desperation. Right. And I think that they call God is the gift of desperation. Right. And it's like, at what point, and everybody's point, you know, everybody's rock bottom is different, you know, and it could be like one bad night where you said some shit you shouldn't have said. Right, you know, that's how it was for Scotty. Scotty went off the deep end for the longest time, and he had a bad day on his boat where he just said some shit to where his wife was like, clean it up or you're out. And, you know, mine was, and I've talked about mine, and this isn't about me, but you know, mine was, I had several times where you would have been like, all right, Justin, is it enough yet? And it was like, nope, rack it up. Let's keep going. You know, no, it wasn't a helicopter chase, police chase. It wasn't time in jail. It wasn't anyways, you know what I mean? So everybody's rock bottom where they're given that gift of desperation is different. So when you say like your vision of an alcoholic is not necessarily in most cases, it's not even close to the hobo sleeping under the pier here in California, right? Like in most cases, it's not. And in most cases, it's like the stay-at-home mom, you know, that wakes up and, you know, has it's Chardonnay o'clock. You know what I mean? Like it's in most cases, it's far more acceptable than we realize. And it's there and it's glooming and you see it everywhere.
Yeah, it's everywhere. And you know, honestly, as a parent, I've realized now how much more detrimental that can be, because you're affecting the next generations. I was causing confusion. You know, so many different messages were coming through my house. You know, as Christians, you know, that's how we've always raised our kids. And so there was a point where I started justifying this in with my Christian walk. And I don't really talk about that a lot because I'm not like an evangelist. That's not my thing. But it is a part of my life. But you know, I don't think alcohol is a sin. I don't think drinking is a sin. I just think that it became my justification allowed me to get to a place where it got out of hand, where it was controlling me. Yeah. And then
let's talk about that for a second, because I think that's very common. I grew up in the Christian church as well. And although I'm Jewish, I grew up a Christian. So I see a lot of people, I call it vacational Christians. Now, some people have thrown shade my way for saying that, but it's like Christians that retrofit their actions and doings into their belief system, where ultimately there ain't nothing biblical about that. As a matter of fact, God's pretty line in the sand about what is and isn't. And I think a lot of people do take advantage of the concept of grace and future grace. And I don't know if you guys know the concept of future grace, which is one of my favorite concepts in the Bible. And I'm not necessarily I'm not incredibly spiritual. I've been kind of going back into that direction, and we don't need to talk about that right now, but maybe later on in the show.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I think a lot of people take advantage of the concept of grace. They have this pseudo belief system that they have, oh, Jesus died for me because of this, and this, and I can go and do this, and this, and accept my future grace. Or it's like because other people are doing certain things, or because it's socially acceptable, or because at least I'm not cheating on my significant other, or at least I'm not that. You are comparing, which makes you lukewarm, which
Right.
biblically is not a good look. God's pretty freaking serious about being lukewarm.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, and I saw it, I saw it quite a bit. It was interesting when I started, it was so odd at the beginning because of the life that I had come from, being the homeschool dad of, 9 or 10 kids, often being mistaken as an Amish guy, especially whenever we farmed. Like I was just in a different world. Like I was always an oddball in school. I didn't do sports. I didn't do any of that. I was never the cool guy. And so my adult life, in my military career, I was always odd. I was always different. I mean, people liked me and I had friends, but I was never really one of the guys. And so when the alcohol got introduced to me, I just went full speed ahead with it. And
did you feel like you became one of the guys?
Oh yeah. And that's why I hit it so hard. Like, especially, I wasn't like a Miller Lite guy. Like I was like I went bourbon for a little bit, but I couldn't really get a taste for it. So I just went straight to really nice Scotch. And then, Scotch wasn't as convenient or easy to get when I did a lot of traveling for work, and bourbon was a lot easier. So I made myself get used to drinking bourbon. Sometimes neat, sometimes, mixed. Red Bull and Michter's Rye was my choice. And, part of my justification, especially when I was traveling, was as odd as it sounds, because when you're drinking, you can be you're really putting yourself in a vulnerable situation, but it actually did keep me out of the bars. It kept me out of situations where, because I was on my own, and I was working with guys that would have been fine with me cheating on my wife or something like that. Like no one would have known ever. But instead, I just kind of, recluded, or whatever the word is, to my hotel room with my bottle of, and I'd travel with my guitar, and I'd work on, some work stuff for our business that we had. So yeah, it's
so you were isolating. Like this is so there's two. This is crazy because in the traditional world of alcoholics, like you like graduated straight to isolation isolated drinker, right? Like Jake was like the going in the garage and drinking to be isolated.
I was just going to mention that. I wasn't a social drinker. I mean, I grew up that way in my 20s, traveling the world.
Right.
But then it came down to I wouldn't go drink at the parties because I would drive my wife.
Correct.
Typically, I would crack the bottle and I'd be in there till 4 a.m. until I pass out on the couch in the garage. And that was me. I was an isolated drunk,
Yeah. So typically you begin to isolate once you identify the problem. You maybe not totally identify it, but maybe like your wife or somebody says like, hey, you got too fucked up that night. You know what I mean? Or whatever. And then it's like all of a sudden you start to become ashamed of how much you're drinking, and then you start to isolate it. And that's typically it. So when you say you went full speed ahead, you went full speed ahead. But one thing that's not, and what you said that you think was being a weird dude or whatever, that's not at all the case. That's very common with all of us, is that we just don't feel comfortable in our own skin.
Yeah.
So
totally.
the one thing about when this is why I go back to AA concept of calling yourself an alcoholic, because we don't feel comfortable in our own skin. It's something that is a trait of an alcoholic or an addict. Okay. We don't feel comfortable in our own skin, and we always feel like we're the odd man out, or we're weird, or we need some sort of social lubricant or something like that. So we resort to taking ourselves out of our sense of normality to bring us a new level of present moment, right? That's typically how this works. So a lot of times when we stop drinking, right, the alcohol's gone, but the tendencies are still there. And that's a dangerous place to be. Quite frankly, in my opinion, being a dry drunk, meaning just not drinking, is worse than being a drunk. And because like the misery, like you're living in misery. You're fucking miserable with the way that you feel about yourself. So a lot of times people need to find something else, right? And it's whether a shift of addiction or something like that. So a lot of people would say that we get sober and we start working out a lot. We start doing whatever we can to feel comfortable in our own skin, but unfortunately, that is not a recipe for long-term sobriety. I'm just going to call it what it is.
Yeah. No, I agree. Yeah.
Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, we've tried all the outlets. We've tried reading the book, like we talk about this in the rooms. Okay, we tried reading the books. We tried going to health farms and sanitariums. We tried doing more exercise. We tried everything possible, everything under the sun. We've tried it, and it never seems to work out, right? So, what does work? And I actually do believe, and inside the rooms or outside the rooms, what needs to actually happen is a spiritual awakening. Like you need to really need to find something that, because drinking's fun.
Oh, yeah.
Doing drugs is fun. It's a blast.
Yeah. Yep.
There's no doubt about it. So what do we need? We need something better.
Yeah.
And some people find
bigger than us, right? Yeah.
Right. And some people find that to be God and church and their religion or whatever. Some people find it to be health and fitness. But I think it's deeper than all of it. I think it really is discovering yourself. I think it really is finding out that shadow character, figuring out where the trauma started or because the scary thing, JD, is, and I see this happen a lot, and I've been sobriety coaching for the last 3 years, and have watched this happen dozens upon dozens of times, is where you get a year, right? And everything's great. You're in the best shape of your life. You're doing really good. And then all of a sudden some trauma happens. Mm-hmm. A loss of a job, a divorce, an affair, a death in the family or something. And then all of a sudden you're like, you crumble inside. Not saying you, I'm just saying anybody that's watching this that is looking for a way to get sober. It's like you have to have a strong foundation, and you have to build your sobriety on something that is real and concrete, and not just not drinking. Right. Just not drinking is fucking miserable. It's boring. You're never going to make it. Sorry. You're never. Yeah. Willpower alone does not work.
Nope.
Not if you're an alcoholic.
JT, what was it for you that finally was your last one? You're like, was it a slow kind of just transition, or was it just like, fucking, I'm done?
So mine took about 11 months of really trying, like giving all my might, right? And I think I'd gotten to a point where I wanted to back up for a second. One of the interesting things about my story, I think, or one of the differences is that, as far as finding that identity, I'd already kind of known who I was, and there was parts of me that I didn't like. Like I didn't like how easily I was stressed, especially with all the kids, because like in our family, I'm the one that wants things clean and orderly and all that, and you just can't have that with a bunch of kids. It's just not possible, especially for a long period of time. We're in a different situation now, like things are much different, but like the last house we lived in with 11 kids, it was 1,200 square feet. Like, and then before that was even smaller. Like we lived in small places, travel trailers, and everything was always tight and so I was just always uptight and upset and not who I had used to be whenever we first got married before we had kids. But so that 11 months that started in January of 23, and the Christmas of 22, I just like, it was just, at the time it was my lowest point. I didn't like, there was some lower points that happened after that, but at the time it was my lowest point. And I was just, and for me, low was like, just couldn't see hope. I just lost hope. And I have everything to live for. My life is absolutely incredible. I have healthy kids. I have amazing grandkids. I've got beautiful kids. Like, it's not like we're ugly and I have to make it work. It's like our businesses were doing well. I live on a beautiful property, really good friends. there's just so much that was going for us, and I just was miserable. I was completely miserable because I'd gotten to the point. I think I just, well, it's probably my personality, but I had just gotten so fast and so hard, so deep into alcohol that I just fast forwarded like what maybe some people can do in a 20-year period. Like I did it really, really quick. I guess, I don't know. It's kind of how I feel. I don't know everyone's story. Everyone's different, but it just felt like it was fast for me. And I couldn't, I just got into a low point. So I decided that I was going to start working out again. And I'd come across probably an Andrew Huberman thing about cold therapy or something like that. So I'm like, we have a pond. Pond was 25 degrees or whatever. So I'm like, or 30 degrees, whatever it was. It was pretty cold. And I was like, I'll go get in the pond. That'll be my thing. And then I'll just try to drink on the weekends, this moderation garbage. And of course, that lasted a half a day, and I drank that night because I earned it, right? I got in the pond this morning. I got up early. So that went on for, about 11 months. I mean, there's things that happened in there that just weren't great. Some other low stuff. And then Thanksgiving of that year, like I even signed up and not even 2 months before a marathon and ran a marathon, hoping that would be my reason to stop. Right. And of course I know now the silliness of all this, but I did it and ran a marathon with my oldest son. That was successful. I did about met my goal, so, but it didn't fix me. It didn't do anything and didn't change, didn't give me any hope or peace or feeling of accomplishment or anything. So, after Thanksgiving, that was the next big holiday. I just reached my low. It was miserable. And, we had an amazing Thanksgiving, like amazing family. Like it's almost like textbook around here, during holidays. Like it's little kids and it's just fun and all kinds of food. And, we have a big place. So, a lot of activity, but I was miserable, completely miserable. 2 days after Thanksgiving, I guess, I don't know what it was exactly other than I had finally admitted to myself that I couldn't do this anymore. I didn't have the strength to do it. I was an alcoholic, which is the first time I had actually admitted it, even to myself. I woke up on a Saturday morning after Thanksgiving, and my first thought was, I guess I'm not going to drink anymore. It felt weird. I didn't know what that was going to look like. I didn't know if it was real. And so I came down and told my wife, told my kids, and then it just kind of, snowballed in a positive way from there. So
awesome. It's amazing what just acceptance can do.
Yeah.
I remember the day that I accepted it, and it was like you knew it. Like you knew it all along. You're like, I know I'm an alcoholic, but you're doing everything you can to be like, well, I'm not as bad as that guy. Oh, but you are. You are as bad as that guy because spiritually you are fucking empty.
Yeah.
You are empty inside. Yeah. And it's wild when you do finally take that moment of acceptance, right? Desperation and acceptance are just two of the most, and rock bottom. Those are the three most beautiful places that you can possibly be in your life because it's only up from there. Yeah. One thing that you said that I want people to take really to heart with this, there is no such thing as moderation.
Yeah.
There is no such thing as moderation. And we talk about this a lot. If you can do it, once you're an alcoholic, if you can go from being an alcoholic to a normal drinker, we'll tip our hat to you. By all means, run it. Let's see it happen. No one's ever done it. Yeah. And people may have do it for a month, 2 months, but they always go back and it always ends up going back. And I know for myself too, I tried it all. Dude, I lost 100 pounds, got in the best shape of my life while drinking tequila in the gym. Like I did everything, and you couldn't keep the bottle away from me. Even when I was high performing insanely in my career, losing weight, getting in the best shape of my life, getting married, like doing all the things, buying a house, like all the things a young guy was doing, I was doing completely shit-faced. completely shit-faced. And then there became a point where it started to turn the other way.
Yeah.
And I'm not even just saying shit-face. I'm saying Coke in the bathroom in between the Caesar salad and the steak coming out at the dinner table. Coke at the dinner table, making a little fort of menus around me so no one could see me take a blast off the table. Boofing MDMA into my asshole with my significant other at the time. Like, we're talking the worst of the worst, like in the middle of like a restaurant, like not in the middle of the restaurant, like like whatever, like just being like a complete degenerate at all times. Everybody knew how much Coke I would do. I'd do it in the open, like sitting at a club, a nightclub, at the bar, or whatever. I'd be shoveling Coke right in my face in front of everybody and didn't care. You know what I mean? And once it started getting to like that level of being out of control, you would have thought I was like in the 70s, Jake.
See, I love that you said that, because JD, it was even, Justin knows my story, but it took, just like he said, I had to get comfortable with my own skin. And so at 40 years old, I made the decision to do my first physique competition, because I was never a super fit guy. Although I've worked out for 10, 12 years, I knew I had to do something extreme. So within those 6 months, the 3 months of prep plus then after, I was absent from alcohol for those 6 months. And then when I went back to it, I felt it. The belly came back a little bit. So then I signed up for another competition. I went another 6 months without alcohol. And then it wasn't until I actually got on the phone with Justin and started JWX, I made the investment, just like everyone does as a client. And I made a promise, although I didn't have a problem. And I told Justin at that point, I was actually an every other weekend drinker, which really saved me. Was I get my actual daughter every other weekend. So the weekend I did have my daughter, I wouldn't be drinking. But you bet your ass the weekend I did not have her and we didn't have my stepdaughter, I would be in the garage. It'd be a UFC fight. It would be till 4 a.m. And I had a problem with a bag, just like Justin. It turned into one bag. And it would only be like a Friday, Saturday. And I'd keep telling myself, well, I'm not as bad as I used to be. But then eventually that excuse just got fucking over. So when I invested with Justin, I made a commitment to myself and my family. Not that I had a problem, but like I told Justin, I did it my own free will. I never said, I'm done drinking. I just said, I am no longer going to drink. But then once Justin became my mentor and coach, I would go to him when I was about to hit the ledge. He would tell me exactly why I wasn't drinking. And then just wins kept stacking. And even just not too long ago, me and my wife celebrated her anniversary and she wanted to go to a winery. And I had told Justin, I go, hey, dude, what would you think if I had a glass of, or a bottle of wine or wine tasting? And he's like, what's the point? And it really made me sit back and go, I'm doing so fun. Even though I told myself I could probably do it, but then I'll keep telling myself that next time, the following weekend, I go, well, I did okay with the wine. Let's see how this Jack Daniels goes down. And then all of a sudden, like Justin knows me, then all of a sudden I'm finding, I'm calling for the bag. Well, it's just one bag. And then the next weekend, well, it's just, you know what I mean? So yeah, I love hearing that kind of story, but Justin nailed the nail on the hammer. It was like, I didn't feel comfortable in my own skin. And it took that physique comp and then investing in JWX to finally say that enough's enough,
And that's the truth. What is the point, really? I mean, we all know. We know what it's like to be, fuck tie one on, right? Like, what's the point of having a taste of wine, right?
I was never the beer when we went out for pizza or a cocktail. No. I was never a one, like, you can't just have one. I'm like, fuck no. Like, I can never drink. You know what I mean? So there's no point to having one because I know what I would want to get to.
You guys do know that what a normal drinker, okay, you guys know how many drinks a normal drinker has and how often they have it? A normal drinker, like what they consider normal.
I don't know any normal drinkers.
A normal drinker has 1.5 drinks and they drink maybe once a month. That's normal. 1.5 drinks, meaning that they have a drink, right? And then they may order another one and they drink half of it and they leave it on the bar. Could you imagine doing that?
That's kind of like my wife. My wife can do that.
Right, because she's a normal drinker and only drink once a month or maybe twice or maybe on special occasions. And you want to know what's crazy? Is that's the vast majority of drinkers.
Wow. Like I said, I've never hung out with a normal, beside my wife, all my friends, we go all fucking, that's why I don't see them much often.
That is how most people who drink, like by a long shot. We couldn't, like, both of your faces were like, huh, right?
Yeah, I mean, I was a normal
drinker. You couldn't even imagine that.
It would be a drink and a half plus 2 more before I even went out.
It would be a drink and a half, and I'd be hitting the Coke man up. But
I'd have a water bottle in the Uber getting to the bar.
No. But again, like, you realize if you line up 10 drinkers, 7 of them drink like that. And you're like, it's hard to conceptualize, right?
Yeah.
Because it really is who we spend our time around, right? It is like, you know, but normal people don't drink like that. They just don't. And to me, when I found that out and when I actually looked that up, and I was like, holy fuck. And that was after I got sober that I discovered that, you know, it's been about 5 years since my last drink. And you know, I went through everything, JD. I've been through drug court. Have you guys ever heard of drug court? Do you know anything about drug court? Oh, they might as well just lock. If you're a drug addict, they might as well just lock your ass up, dude. Like you are not gonna make. I didn't graduate drug court. I had to go to rehab.
Wow.
I had to go to rehab. There was no way. I never pissed dirty or blew, but it was hard, dude. It was so hard because you're like on the clock with them at all times. Drop everything you're doing, show up, piss in the cup.
Or something? Like
what's that?
What, is it some kind of camp or something? Like what?
No, you're free, but you're basically like you have to report to a probation officer and a judge, and every morning you have to call in, and they give you like a code, and if your code gets pulled, you got to go in and you got to piss, and then you got to meet with the judge. And you have to talk in front of everybody else in drug court every other week. And it's like they review your stuff and things like that. The reason that you go to drug court is to retain your driver's license.
Oh, gotcha.
So if you can make it through drug court, which is like 2 years of living under the thumb, meaning and you don't have a driver's license at first. So that means that depending on where the drug court is, you have to get an Uber or a taxi cab, depending on where you like JD, where you live, like you would be fucked in drug court.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's not going to work out here. Yeah. I thought you were saying drug, like Corps, like Marine Corps or something. That's why I was thinking camp, but you're saying
court. Yeah. Drug court.
Gotcha. Yeah. No, I didn't know about that either, but that sounds pretty miserable.
I've only known 2 people to ever get through it, and I did not. Wow. Drug court for me ended up with me ready to commit suicide, ready to blow my brains out, like instantly, like literally, gun in my hand, ready to blow, like until my brother saved my life.
Wow.
Yeah. It's hard.
Yeah.
But doesn't have to get like that.
No.
Okay. So can I ask, how bad did it get? What was Thanksgiving like? I mean, did you just get shitty? What was, I mean, I think I like to see the picture. I like to know what I'm dealing with.
Yeah. I think, for me, completely being absent in my mind, and, you know, my body was there, but just being absent from all the life that was around me, and not being that leader that it was very obvious that I've been called to be, you know, to my sons, to my daughters, you know, to my, you know, son-in-law, daughter-in-law, my grandkids, like I didn't really know what family was like, really. So we've kind of been just establishing this since we've been married, you know, over the last 28 years. We've just been coming from literally nothing. That's kind of what my tattoo's about. It's like, you know, everyththing's backwards with us. Like we didn't come from any roots. The roots are like our children, you know, we're going kind of pouring into our children or whatever. So
that's real. Can you elaborate on that? That's probably one of the most profound things that I've heard.
Yeah, it's hard for me to really put it in words, but so you know, both of my wife and me, we both came from, you know, a lot of people come from broken, dysfunctional homes, and so it's not like we're anything special in that. But for some reason, whenever we got married pretty quick. I mean, within a month of meeting each other, or 6 weeks or whatever, we were married, and of course, no one liked that, understandably, and right away. Or within a couple of years, we had our first child. My wife wanted several kids, and we learned really quick that not only did we not come from a good family, but there was something that wasn't good about our family being involved with our life. So we just cut everyone off. We had to, because we didn't know how to parent. I'd never been around kids. I didn't know anything about it. It was kind of tough. I mean, as you can imagine, right? New parenting is tough. Like, you have no clue. My kids are being set up different. They actually do have a clue. And I'm so thankful for that. But so, over the course of however many years, we just realized that we just kept this narrative that we, didn't have our own, we didn't have roots established anywhere. There was no hometown to go home, to go back to, nothing like that. Obviously we grew up in certain areas and, we've visited, but it's just weird memories. So no roots. And so when I finally got to the place to where where it was okay for me to get a tattoo, my wife she's not really big into ink, but I was on a job somewhere and I had a buddy draw this idea up. I'm like, look, this is what I want. I want something that represents, this root system going down, but our kids are all in the roots. And, there's two rings of like infinity rings. And then there's like an infinity symbol of like perpetual love or whatever. And then there's a leaf for each. At the time I had 10 kids. And so there's a leaf for each child that represents from a certain tree, that type of child's kind of personality. Right. And so that's what all this is kind of represents to me. And so it was, once I, got to that point of being able to explain, this is what I want. Like, my wife was like, hell yeah. Like, this is meaningful. Right. Cause so many people, well, her assumption and my assumption at the time, we didn't know a lot of people with ink. So you think people just get stuff, right? You don't realize the meaning behind it. And I've since found that like there's some pretty incredible stories and meanings behind a lot. And I have plans for more, but it's not at the right time in life. But yeah, so that's what that's about. We're pouring into our kids in such a way that, the legacy that we're leaving is pretty important to us. And so coming to this place of, at that Thanksgiving that I was missing, I was screwing it up. I wasn't at where I should have been or where I wanted to be. And I had reluctantly gotten my wife into drinking a little bit. She wasn't a heavy drinker at all. And so we had just gotten to the place to where that was my low, like feeling like I was doing the exact opposite of what I wanted to do. And being a dad is pretty important to me. I don't know how to do everything well and perfect, but I take it very seriously. And we've always parented, even during my time of drinking, with intention, like very intentional in everything that we do, the way that we teach, the way that we school, I've delivered 10 of my children at home without we're very intentional with how we've done everything. It's not for everyone, but we just, the burden of the responsibility was very heavy. And I was shucking my responsibility, throwing it away. And that was low enough for me.
Yeah. That, it's, I think a lot of that, because I think, fuck, how many holidays, how many holidays has a normal alcoholic ruined? I know for myself, I there's countless, not ruined, but just not being present and getting too fucked up and whatever. But when you say your story's a little bit backwards, that does make a lot of sense, because you've already having that many children and raising them and homeschooling them and doing all of that. Like you have two things that, are going to be embedded into that circumstance. One is going to be an incredible amount of selflessness, and that's going to change the other thing, which is going to be your conscience. Right. You become extremely self-aware when you have that much responsibility. And in some cases it's not burden, but for better lack of words, it's a lot. You know what I mean? It's a lot right there. So for you to say like, this isn't because, you choose to have 11 children. That's not 11. That's not 11 accidents. That's for sure. Maybe a couple, but not, you know what I mean? Like, and Yeah, that's pretty intentional. So, you know, at some point you got to realize how selfish you're being with your drinking.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, because as selfish as you're being with your drinking, you need to be just as selfish with your sobriety. And I think a lot of people get that fucked up. I think a lot of people say like, "Oh, I quit drinking for my family. I quit drinking for my kids." That's a recipe for you to relapse.
Yeah, it's not going to work.
Really? Okay. Never thought of it that way.
100%. 100%. It is exactly how it is. I had to question myself, because when I finally became so self-aware, in the beginning stages of getting sober, and getting my mental health right, I was doing it for the wrong reason. I was doing it to salvage a relationship.
See, I guess that makes sense because, yeah, looking back at when I decided to stop, it wasn't because Angela or my kids. It was because it was me. I said I wanted to do it for
Right.
myself. And I've
Right. Understanding the concept of the oxygen mask in an airplane, right? You put the oxygen mask on yourself before your needs need to be met before you can meet the needs of anybody else. And that's very important to understand. So a lot of times when guys tell me, they're like, "Oh, I haven't drank in 6 months, doing it for these little ones." You're like, "All right, bro, you'll be right back here in a year or less," because again, you're not, there is a spiritual awakening. There's something that has to happen inside of you to truly adopt a sober lifestyle, and to not just be sober, but thrive in sobriety. And thriving in sobriety is where you really want to be, not just not drinking. Dry drunks that's just as miserable as being drunk.
Yeah.
It really is.
And that's how I used to be. It'd be 6 months at a time. Oh, I made it 6 months and reward myself for what I did previous. And then it just ended up escalating into a bender as opposed
100%. 100%. That's why I disagree with like dry January and sober October and all of these things, because sure, you know, the only nice thing about sober October is you can connect with the people who are taking the month off. And then as soon as November comes back around, you're back to not actually connecting with them. And that's just the truth. But at the end of the day, the idea of thriving in sobriety is a confidence game, because going back to what we discussed, that we drink because we don't feel normal. We drink because we don't feel comfortable in our own skin. There's something in us that says that we need to feel some type of way. We have a hard time finding present moment. So we use or drink, or we find something external to make us feel internally whole.
Yeah.
So the reason that the work needs to be selfish is so you can find the right way to make yourself feel internally whole. And until you actually have that, you are unlikely to thrive in sobriety, and most likely to relapse.
Yeah.
And it happens more often than not. That exact thing you were talking about in your storyline, where the relapse rate, you know, is 90%, is absolutely true. Relapse rate is 90% across the board, not just in AA. It's across the board, because most people just stop using the substance, not realizing that they don't have a drinking problem, they have a thinking problem.
Right.
Yep. Yeah. I just heard something, I think it was last week through Reborn, and it made me think, not that I ever want to pick up a drink or I feel the urge to drink or use, but it was, God, how to go, is like, I wouldn't trade my best days using for my worst days sober. And that kind of stuck with me, because I was like, damn, it kind of makes you think like, fuck, that's, even when you're feeling your lowest and people want to grab that bottle, is when it's like, you know, so that hit me pretty hard, even though I don't have the urge to drink or use. I like that a lot. It's a cool quote.
It's the facts though. But I will tell you that really sober, spiritually awakened sober, because there's a difference. There's a huge difference, bro.
Yeah.
And that difference is really what makes or breaks.
Elaborate on that spiritual. Elaborate on that, Jay.
Okay. So I'm going to speak in terms of the 12 steps, but not in terms of AA. Okay.
Okay.
So the first thing, right? And just, I'm going to skip around a little bit just so you have an understanding of where the spiritual awakening comes from. Okay. So stuff, obviously right away, we have to admit that we have a problem, that our lives are unmanageable. Right. And that's your first step. Right. And that's exactly where JD was, where he was like, you know what, that's it. Like, I have a problem. Right. Like I finally put my finger on the trigger and said, this is it. Right. This is the issue. This is the common denominator. This is the problem. Right. Then that's when the actual inner work starts to go. So we give up, we give everything to a God of our understanding. We start doing inner work on ourselves. We start challenging our fears, our resentments, the people that we've harmed, like all the different things that we've done throughout our drinking career, right? Now we're actually doing work. We're getting ourselves out of our comfort zone just to invest time into our sobriety. We are, and ourselves as a whole, right? We right our wrongs. We go back to the people that we've harmed. We talk to them. We straighten things out, so we're not sweeping shit under the rug. So we're not trying to like get past an issue that was an issue and let it go and hope for whatever, because sometimes those people are still hurting. On top of that, you need to know that you've done your best to make all your wrongs right inside, right? We really take time to look at our character defects. Now, again, like I said, I'm not going through everything because people that know, and if you don't, find out for yourself. Okay. But like, we take time to understand our character defects, and we take time to meditate on our character defects and what we can do to be basically the opposite of all of our character defects. And I think a lot of times when we actually are woken up to what we actually are, right? And most of the time the drinking has nothing to do with it. It's not, the drinking isn't even the actual problem. The problem is our fears, our resentments, our traumas, the people who have wronged us, the people we have wronged, the people we feel that have wronged us, even though they probably really didn't, right? All of those things, we start to realize, like, fuck, I'm jealous, right? I'm a liar. I'm conceited. I'm arrogant, right? I'm selfish. I'm a glutton. I have issues with sexual things. You start to really realize like who you really are. But then when you take time to acknowledge the fact that you are those things, and that's a brutal awakening. Mm-hmm. And especially to have another man. It's like, like sit across from you tell a guy all the things that you've done, the people you've harmed and everything. And they tell you like, yeah, dude, you're a piece of shit. You're a piece of shit. But that guy, so is he. And that guy probably did 10 times worse, right? From there, you take that time to really meditate on what you don't want to be and what you do want to be. Okay. You start to take an internal inventory, right? You start to like, you become conscious of your day to day. You become conscious of the people throughout your day, who you've harmed, who you lied to, who you owe an apology to, right? All of the things that you do every single day, you start to really acknowledge your existence, why you're here. And once you get to that level of true confidence, now imagine being so mindful, so self-aware on the day-to-day, because we all live one day at a time. So on the day-to-day that you take that time, it's the same as when you get into shape. It's the same as with anything, right? Confidence is a product of repetition. Doing the same thing over and over and over again is how you. So imagine if you take that time to do that spiritual work every single day of your life, before you know it, your confidence is at a whole new level. So then what? Then what? You graduate, right? You've graduated. So then what? You carry the message. You help other people. Now you've truly graduated, because every single person that you help get sober, and again, this is inside and outside of the 12-step rooms, okay? Everybody that you help from there is growing your own strength. It's another notch on your belt. It's another human that you've gone out of your way to serve, knowing that you're going to grow. And that growth is the same across the board, you guys. And that's what a lot of people don't realize. It's not even just with alcoholism. It's not even just with drugs. It's not even just with anything. It's everything.
dude, 90% of our coaches could use that ethic, dude, that mindset. When we say mindset, fitness, nutrition, like that right there is an awakening for many. I love that. I've never heard that from you.
I think everybody should work the 12 steps, regardless if you're an alcoholic or not. I think it's just a good practice.
I've been debating it.
It's not a bad practice. It's a really rude awakening. It's a really rude awakening. Think about in your job. If anybody's ever been in a situation where you were getting promoted, but you had to train the person that was taking your job over, right? It's like, Jake, we're going to make you regional manager, bro, but we got this guy that we need you to train up to run the store before we can make you regional manager, right? And that guy, let's call him Jimmy. And Jimmy's stoked. Jimmy's life's about to change. Jimmy's going to go from making 5 figures to 6 figures. He's going to get the keys to the building. He's going to have people that answer to him. He's going to be in a situation where he can get a new house. He can get a new car. He could probably afford to like meet a good woman and have a wife and start a family. His life's about to change. But Jake, your job is to teach Jimmy how to do that, how to do the thing that's going to change the rest of his life. So you stand over Jimmy every single day. You show him the ropes. You show him like, this is what I did when, two of my salespeople or my employees or whatever it is, when they would be going at it, or if somebody came to me and asking for this, or somebody came to me that I had to reprimand for this, or the company goes through a crisis over in this department. This is how I would handle all of that. Right. And you're watching Jimmy's eyes light up. Oh my God, I can't believe what I'm learning. I can't believe what my life is going to become. Look at this responsibility that I have. Look at everything that I get. Do you know internally what helping Jimmy does for Jake?
Yeah. Quite a bit. Dude. Yeah.
That's why we do what we fucking do.
Yeah.
It's selfish. God's work is selfish.
Yeah.
And that's okay. That's a good thing.
Makes me want to do the 12 step. Never really thought about it. That's great.
Come out to Newport tonight.
Shit. I need to.
Well, it's Corey's birthday. That's why I'm going, is for Corey's birthday.
He hasn't moved yet?
He has. He moved. He came back from Indiana just to get his chip.
Wow. That's huge.
The guy we're talking about was my roommate in rehab. We're 2 grown men, roommates. He used to shave my back.
JD, where do you live?
South Carolina.
Okay. Beautiful.
Parts of it are. We're in a pretty area. We're in the northern part up near Charlotte, North Carolina, near the border.
I was just gonna say Charlotte. Yeah, I've been through there many times.
Yep.
West Virginia, way too many times.
Yeah.
Way too many times.
It's pretty up there.
So now you were talking. You served. Thank you for your service. How long were you in the military?
I just did 4 years. Got out before all the current stuff's going on. So I got out in 01, actually right before.
So bring me up to speed from service now up until you're, fit over 40, like your entire fitness career. Like, how did that kind of come together?
So just worked and traveled. After I got out of the military, I got into being an electronic technician. Kind of still worked with the military just as a contractor, mainly with the Marine Corps, MARSOC guys. Did some pretty cool jobs, different places. Worked at NASA, worked at pretty cool places that not many people get to go to and see behind the scenes. Traveled a lot. On one of my jobs, I was down in Jacksonville, Florida, This is probably when I was 37 or 38. And I was staying with a friend and his wife. You get per diem to stay at different places, and we were sharing a apartment together. And she was a fitness coach for Beachbody. Okay. And so they were doing their, he wasn't super active himself, my buddy. But he would go to the gym with her, and she was on stage performing, like she did all kinds of shows and stuff. But I'd never worked out. And so I went. That was my first experience with pre-workout. I don't remember which one it was. It was one of the bottle ones, and it jacked me up pretty bad. And got to the gym, and it was a little gym. Did not have a clue, but I was at that point in time. I think I had realized that I just needed to. That's probably when I started to realize that I just had to put myself in uncomfortable situations, to learn. And I was 6'1", 149 pounds, 155 on my good days. Pretty skinny guy, and she was stronger than me, and that really bothered me. So I just kind of went full speed ahead into learning as much as I could. Yeah. That job ended. I ended up in Hawaii for a year by myself, or, with some other guys or whatever, but on a job without my family. And so I just went full speed ahead in the fitness stuff. I'd started dabbling in drinking beer a little bit, IPAs, things like that. I think on that job during that first year was when I first drank. A friend of mine used to drink Crown, and so I got a bottle of Crown, and it was the most disgusting thing I'd ever had, and which I still think that to this day. But anyway, it was the cool thing to do, right? And so I just kind of forced myself doing a couple of beers a night. I was trying to gain weight. I'd put on about 35 pounds over the course of that year and a half, just by eating chicken, rice, drinking beer, and just working out, And so my fitness and my drinking all started around the same time. And I had some pretty lofty goals by the time I was going to be turning 40. Considering I'd never been in the gym, I wanted to be able to bench 300. I wanted to be able to bench my weight, which was 185 at the time, my age, which was 40. I had some pretty lofty goals, and I met most of those goals. And then I kind of just, I think work got super busy. I came back to the mainland, and I was traveling quite a bit, doing a lot of commuting, driving back and forth to Florida from North Carolina every weekend, working 410s down there, driving home. Like, it was pretty brutal work schedule. I did that for about 6-7 years, and just started drinking pretty heavy while I was on the job in the evenings, and some when I was home, it was still odd for my family to see me drinking. So I kind of subconsciously, I think, just kind of eased into it. Yeah. And eventually drinking just won the battle. It took over. By the time we moved here to our place in South Carolina, it was at the beginning of it was right in the midst of finding out what COVID was. And we moved here. We thought we were going to be plugging into a little town here, and that didn't happen. So just a little more isolation. But again, we have a decent place, and I had kind of thought that I had made it. When you go from a 1,200 square foot house on 4 acres to 6,000 square feet on 30 acres with an amazing pond, and we got an amazing deal in this place. So we just walked into a little piece of heaven, and I'd kind of made it. Is what I thought. I was 45, 46 years old. We reached it. Was making $500,000 a year, and which was 10 times my income prior. So like a lot of things had changed, and so I just kind of retired in my mind. I wasn't interested in if like my wife is like Miss Business. That's all she. Not all, but pretty much, like, a lot of our conflict while I was drinking was about all her business ideas. So every time she had a kid, she came up with a new business idea. We've had 7 or 8 businesses, and we currently have got 3 or 4 going on, and it's just, that's her world, and she loves it. And I would reluctantly be a part of it. I was like the the computer guy. I'd set up websites, set up, do the accounting and all that, and do all the labeling and the copying on our, product. We had a skincare company for a while. But I was just kind of done. I was like, I'm done with this. I just want to kind of relax, sit at the pond, kind of party, like family party. I want to be the one that teaches my kids how to drink a lot, drink, respond, whatever, that whole thing. And fitness just went out the window. All my calisthenic goals that I had that I'd kind of worked towards just flew out the window. And I'd gotten, I'd put on probably another 20 pounds of just fat, and any muscle I had was gone. I mean, I'd gotten to the point where when I started working out again, I couldn't do one pull up without a band, and 5 years prior, I'd been trying to accomplish a muscle up. Like it just went downhill really fast. Plus I'd gained, a lot of weight for me. And, so that's kind of my fitness, introduction. Was at the same time as alcohol.
So you see this 6'5" tatted metalhead. I mean, what made you kind of like reach out and go for the online kind of? I mean, were you already doing online prior to?
No, I wasn't doing online stuff. I had no intentions of doing any online coaching. I said it several times, actually. I didn't want to be a coach. And part of my, after the Thanksgiving, part of my like real, finally not drinking, in January of this year, I started this Fit Over 40 Dad Instagram page as accountability for myself, just to keep me accountable to showing up every day and posting something. And I was kind of using it as a training ground because, I started from zero, right? For our business, we had 2 business Instagrams. And we were trying to just, keep validity in that, keep an exposure. And so I was just posting a lot. And then I started an Ice Dad 11 Instagram account. And so that was where I was trying to keep things a little separate, fitness on here and some dad stuff, but then I had a personal page on Instagram that I don't really mess with much anymore. Our dog, we breed golden doodles. That's our main business now. And so we had that going. And then I had this cold therapy page. In I think March or April of this year, I was kind of done with the Fit Over 40 Dad page. I had 50 followers. I had 200 posts or something, and I just was kind of done. I was like, what's the point in this? Like, I'm posting 2 or 3 times a day. I don't understand what the point of this anymore. I feel pretty solid. A buddy of mine from school who, anyway, he's got the ability to make hats. He sent me a hat with the Fit Over 40 Dad logo, this thing. And he sent me 2 hats, and it just reignited because he told me about how it was inspiring him, how it was helping him. He's the same age as me. And so just that one reach out just kind of inspired me to get back at it. And then I did a post introducing myself, who I was, me running, and it went crazy and berserk. And the page started growing somewhere around the 10 to 15,000 follower mark. I came across one of Justin's, I guess, ads. And I had just gotten exposed a little bit to some hate stuff on my page and on our dog page. And so and I knew how authentic and real we were. And I knew the hate stuff, how it kind of, people tend to reach out and find people that are authentic and real to try to just tear them down. And I knew that from experience, my little bit of experience. And I remember telling that to Justin the first time I talked to him. I don't know if you remember that. I'm like, he's like, why? Yeah. Probably in our onboarding call or sales call or whatever, I don't know, whatever it was. And he's like, why'd you reach out? And I'm like, well, because I liked that you had hate comments and that they were there for me to read, and they're so funny to me now. And anytime I'm like in a dry spell, I just search through some hate comments and it reignites the fire, So,
oh, yeah.
And you get kind of passionate.
Oh, it's the best.
Oh. Yeah. I mean, some of it is pretty stupid. On that particular post where I'm kind of running, it's a silly video that I had no intentions of posting, but I did it anyway. It was kind of a trending thing at the moment, which is probably the last trending thing that I ever really paid attention to, was hi, actually the trending thing was to be standing in front of like your garage door or a wall and just kind of be standing there all stupid looking while, someone videos you, and then you say who you are, right? You stack it, the copy over it. But my son took that video of me in front of my garage and I didn't like the video. So I just trashed it. I was like, I look stupid. The angle, it's weird. So we went for a run and I got that video, posted it. But the amount of hate is one thing, but just vulgar stuff about people think that, when they hear that I have 11 kids, which was part of my introduction, about who I was, they think that you have 11 kids running around diapers, right? And so if that's the case, I'm not running. My wife is standing in the kitchen with her uterus hanging out, like comments like this. I mean, it's just complete nonsense and garbage. And so a lot of the stuff I would delete because, it's just like, it's just too much negativity on the page, right? But a lot of the hate stuff I would leave because it's kind of comical. I mean, the ignorance of people astonishes me sometimes.
It's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the one you were reading today, Justin. I thought was funny because the guy started off on some subject, and then I guess because you didn't respond right away in seconds, he was like, "Oh, now I'm going to attack his shirt and attack it." Like, what does this have to do with anything? I mean, it's so ridiculous that they can't see. But when you don't have self-awareness, this is how you act, right? When you don't have self-awareness, you just spew things. You have no idea what you're saying or why you're saying it. So, yeah, I mean, it's
that particular guy, he actually, what's crazy is he actually followed me. He was a follower of mine. And whatever I said in that reel, must have really struck a nerve with him. But it's incredible to me that one, nobody that's doing anything special will ever talk shit. They just won't. Right. It won't happen.
Right.
Okay. I don't know. I'm most of my friends are busy doing their own businesses, raising their family.
Yeah.
No one. Yeah. No, I mean, I do. I have plenty of time. I can do whatever I can say and do whatever I want. I would just never think to, because the fact is, hurt people hurt people.
Yes.
And I'm not a hurt person, so I have no desire to go and hurt somebody. But if you throw something at me, you better be bulletproof. You better be really bulletproof because I will slam you out of control based on facts. And when somebody comes at me and one calls me a whale, now listen, I'm not the most ripped guy, but like I showed myself in that picture, I got a six pack. Maybe not the most diced six pack, but I got a six pack. And then, to talk about my shirt, like dog, like you follow me, you see me going shopping at high-end stores. Like I put everything out there. Like why would you even bother? And anyways, that doesn't even matter. But the last thing is when I turned back and looked at his page and I was like, well, hold on a second. This guy's a total fraud. He's a complete phony.
Yeah.
And you know who's a phony and who isn't because the numbers don't lie.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, well, I'm going to come back at you and I'm going to throw straight facts. And it's going to be really bad for you. And he literally goes, you have no idea what you just did for me. Thank you, bro. And then he blocked me. And I was like, were you trying to act like whatever? Like, I just called you out for being a liar. Like what, and showed fact that you are a liar. Like, and it is what it is. And it didn't make my day. But at the same time, I had to sit back and laugh because it's like, I practice the Eminem 8 Mile. I'll undress myself in front of everybody just so I can have the satisfaction of you knowing that you can't say a goddamn thing about me.
Yeah. I mean, he's just, people like that are just the epitome of no self-awareness. They don't know what's going on in their world. And it's kind of sad, but at the same time, like, and people will say stuff to me and they'll use the Christian thing. Like, oh, I'm supposed to just like bend over and take it because I'm a Christian. I'm like, no, that's not how it works. That's not how I work. I'll be the most loving and caring, gracious person. But if you come at me or come at my family, like, watch out, in whatever capacity I have to protect, I will. And, I've called out a few people in my little platform and it's, it is what it is. Like if I find myself just getting consumed with the individual, then I just will delete it and block it, just because. And then it's just like, there used to be a guy that my mom listened to, I think when I was a kid, and it's like, whatever that pain was, you just write it down and then burn it, right? Burn it on a piece of paper and then burn it. And it's like, it just goes away. And I've never really done that, but I've done it with the social media stuff. And it's like, it's true. It works. Like if I can't if that one thing is just, for some reason it bothers me, which is very rare, especially anymore. Like, when it first happens, especially if you want to be liked, and I'm in the process of trying to, this sobriety thing, like you're really trying to figure out your identity, and it's, your identity is not just wrapped up in fitness or not drinking or whatever, like you're saying, like there's something deeper. And so you're really trying to, you're self-evaluating all the time. And so when things come your way, it's like, well, I don't know, I haven't really thought about that, but that sounds like it really, shouldn't bother me, but let me evaluate and see, is there any truth to this? Right. So,
Now,
anyway,
haters gonna hate, right?
it's what they do. Yeah. They,
So, JD, last thing from me, dude, and then I'll let Justin wrap it up. But you said something, you were at 50 followers back in May. So to some of our coaches or aspiring entrepreneurs or people that are coming up in the social media game, what would your best advice be that helped you grow throughout these last 3 or 4 months to build your following?
Yeah, I think it was April or so, but man, just volume. I mean, we talk about it quite a bit. And a lot of people worry about the quality of what they put out there. And I can get that, but like we've pointed out so many times, and like I'm helping my wife, go start a page right now. And I feel like I could give a class on this stuff, because I just, just jumped into this with everything, just volume, like a lot of stuff, but no one's seeing your stuff at first. So who cares? Like, this is how you learn. You learn. I look back at some of my original stuff, and I was trying to do cover pages and all this. And that's the other thing too. I did reach out to one of the guys last night that was asking, like, don't overcomplicate it. Like, especially on Instagram. Like, if you have the ability to do something quick and make it look fancy, then yeah, whatever. But like spending hours and hours trying to edit a video on Instagram, like that's a YouTube thing. Like, it's unnecessary for like, like a lay person like me that, I don't have all the fancy tools. I'm fairly handy with a computer and tech, but I can only make it so fancy.
Sure.
But it's completely unnecessary. The attention span on Instagram, it's not as bad as TikTok, I don't think, but it's pretty low, I mean, there's quality out there once you've established authority, to where people will actually listen to you. It took me a long time, and I don't really feel like I have authority yet, but it did take me a long time to even post something longer than a minute and a half, right? On the post, you can post up to 10 minutes, and it just get on rants every once in a while, and they actually do well now, but they wouldn't have at the beginning. But not that it would have been bad to do that, but there's just timing. But just a lot of, I was posting on 5 different accounts, on 4 of them every day, and on 4 of them I was posting at least 2 reels every single day.
Wow.
Morning and night on 4, and then at least 1 on my personal Instagram page, my original one, once. And I was also trying to do YouTube Shorts at the time for our business, and I was also trying to do TikTok at the time. Like, I mean, my work schedule, I work from home, so I get that I have maybe some more time freedom in my world, but I also have a large family. Also, like, we all have excuses. Like, maybe you have a 10-hour day job, but I've got 8 kids that need my attention, plus 3 out of the house, plus 4 grandkids. Like we all have excuses. We all have things. So volume would be my number one thing, and don't worry about don't overcomplicate it. Like, just put stuff out there. Eventually you will get the aesthetics where you want it to be, right? That'll happen. And some people are quicker than others. Some people just can't figure it out, and they maybe need a little hand holding, and that's fine. Just reach out to people that are doing it. Especially within the coaching team here. Like, everyone is so, I went back and forth with James, Peter, is that what his name is? James. yeah, we went back and forth for about an hour today, just like, like good stuff. And then I reached out to some other guy, but yeah, I mean, it's volume and don't overcomplicate it.
Appreciate that.
100%.
Yeah.
No, that's all. That's really it. And that's what I teach. Volume and
Yep.
authenticity. Anyone that tries to argue that with me, like no one has ever tried to, because it'd be stupid to argue volume and
You can't
authenticity.
argue it.
So what do you mean I should work hard and be myself? Yep. Yep. Sorry. You know what? Here, I'll invoice you for my mentorship services, but it is that. But the problem is that people need the actual accountability, right? And then on top of that, like, yeah, there's a lot to learn how to do things, but there's a lot to learn what not to do. And that's where we step in, inspiration and motivation and all of that stuff is all fantastic, but learn from the mistakes. That's the biggest thing you can do. And that's awesome. Well, JD, we're going to put all of your stuff below so people know where to find you, man. This was awesome.
Yeah, this was good.
We need to do this more often. Love your story.
Yeah.
Thank you for your service. And I don't know what's harder, being in the military or raising 11 kids, but
Well, I was in the Air Force, so definitely raising 11 kids.
Well, guys,
That was great.
That was pretty neat there. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for listening in. We went an hour and 21 minutes, so if you made it this far, we appreciate you. Make sure you click subscribe. Make sure you go check out JD's page, the Fit Over 40, and we'll put all the information down below. Jake, man, thanks for joining me on this one, and we'll see you next time on another episode of the Wolves Only Podcast, powered by JWX. We are out.